Yeah, this stuff has opened up the doors, right? People are doing it themselves, whether we like it or not. I mean, there's probably a role in terms of education, helping them along.
Well, and the thing is that there's no cookie cutter for that stuff.
Nope.
No, you
Right.
can't say this is how we're gonna do Facebook here because that's how Facebook works
Well,
there.
because it worked for someone doesn't mean
Yeah.
it's gonna work for you, right?
Yeah.
So there is still this DIY kind of approach to it that let's like it's a series of measured experiments, really, right? So we're gonna see if this worked, and this measured experiment worked really well over here. So, but at the end of the day, it's still relatively new. I mean, we're talking 5 years old, 6
Yeah.
years old, right? I mean, no one has all the answers yet.
Well, and I know for us from the time we started doing, since we're talking social media as a strategy, till now, we look back at when we were first doing that and just kind of, oh my goodness, how could we have been so naive? Because there was, well, here's these cardinal rules of how you do this. Oh, okay, so it worked in case number 1. You try and apply that same thing in case number 2 with a different brand. Oh, it doesn't work. And you have to look at, what is the mix. And so in terms of doing strategy, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity there for us as an industry to provide intelligence. And if it is a matter of, you can pay for strategy, but you can't pay for execution. A good strategy is worth way more anyway. So, but let's really then do it really well, and not just don't just go online and read a book.
Right.
We actually bring someone in who is capable of analyzing your situation and doing it well, and then you're going to get really good value for those dollars, and then you can potentially action that yourself.
Well, yeah, and it also comes down to knowing your audience, right? I mean,
Yeah.
companies should know their customers better than any of us, right? So let's get those insights. As I think someone said here, they have the information already. It's really just a matter of pulling that information out and presenting it back to them in a way that is usable and in a way they can act on.
So take things like experiential marketing, event sponsorship, partner marketing, is that the new term out there? Those, how do you blend that? Because if you want information from people, there's social, but and there's a big crowd on social, but not everybody's talking, and so there's the comment of, well, only people only put negative information, right? So whether you're doing a comment on a blog or information or a story, the only time anything ever gets put up there is because it's negative. It gives the average person the opportunity to vent unaided. They can do what they want and say what they want to a degree. But you want to still learn about them. So where does events and experiential and other things fall into the whole mix?
Well, I think, two examples that probably near and dear to hockey fans right now. One, if you look at the NHL and their continued drive to they want to truly find out who their fan is so they can market themselves a little bit better. So you look at the NHL All-Star Game and their whole fan experience center that they had, or NHL Face-Off that came to town at the beginning of the hockey season. When you wanted to go into one of their cubicles and do whether it be the hardest shot or the stick handling drills or whatever, they had nice little pods with a covered up iPad, and you had to put in a little bit of information about yourself and opt into them talking to you via their email marketing campaigns.
Yeah.
But in that information, it was little things like male or female, where do you live, age range, those sorts of things. Yeah, favorite team. So they can speak to you more directly about that. It might be masked in an experience, and that you're almost, you don't feel bad about it. It's like, yeah, I really want to do this. I want to see if I can shoot the puck harder than Dustin Byfuglien. Yeah, let's just quickly get through that, put that, and get into it. All of a sudden, they've got what they need to come back at you, and you've said yes. You've opened the door. On the reverse side, you look at at Bud's, the execution of Bud on whether it be their flash mob around the Super Bowl with hockey or the fan group. I mean, the emotional connection that they made to Manitobans, and if you look at the sheer shift in sales volume in this province by brand is insane, because people have bought into this whole experiential side. I mean, the YouTube videos that they got up, but people were posting them on their Facebook site. Well, then people can go back into that Facebook site and see who was forwarding it along. So it was a backdoor way through tugging at a heartstring to go and see that information on a broader base. You know, and obviously tugging at a heartstring of the Jets, but
Well, but so that goes back to the foundation of it's emotion. You create an emotional connection, and you will, no matter what it has, whether it's print or anything.
it's never. I don't believe it's ever changed.
Oh
I
yeah,
think
the
that-
story has to remain intact, right? Yeah, I mean, I think it's just making sure you got the right narrative, the right story, apply that over multiple channels, right? In a way that's relevant to each one of those channels, right? And making sure you have a feedback.
And social media and experiential marketing really complement each other so well because the average person's Facebook page is not reflective of their real life. It's reflective of their ideal life. And so if you're giving them an experience that gives them a certain level of prestige or cool factor or credibility, they're going to want to share that because it completes this sort of perception of themselves. So the trick, I think, is to find something that is connected to them, that gives them the certain status that they want for whatever reason, and they're going to take that story, your experience, and share it to their group. And that's a huge difference with the demographic behind me as compared to the demographic ahead of me. My parents wouldn't ever share a location, for instance, in any form where they've been with a photo, and I think my generation's fairly comfortable with it. The generation following me, that's common. That's just what we're used to. So
It's an assumption.
yeah.
Well, using that as my parents, when the Safeway Club card came out, I'm not giving them my phone number. They'll know what I bought. Now, kids, like it's everywhere, right? Just phones are everywhere, and device. I don't even call them phones anymore; they're mobile devices, and it's just stuff is out there.
And your parents probably have a card now, don't they?
Pardon?
Do your parents have a Safeway card now?
Oh yeah, because now they want the points.
Yeah.
Right? So let's. I want to touch on that a bit because on two things. Ryan, you brought up the Budweiser shift. Do you think the average consumer really realizes? I mean, they have fun with the whole
no water
Bud
in that
can and even some of the stuff they do during intermission at games and all these things. Do you think general public is seeing that? Really, what they've done is they've said we're going to buy into this as the Jets. But what they've done behind the scenes, because they said if we're going to spend this money to invest in the sponsorship of the team, we got to get that back. And we're going to get that back through market share. And the beer market share, I'm going to suggest, is probably one of the biggest things to shift because of everybody's loyalties. But here they've done it, right? Or they seem to have done it. You would have that information more than I would. They seem to have done it, and they've done it through this experiencing all these things that go along with it, and they've utilized all of the tools that you guys are talking about.
But you just look at on that example. Just look at the neighborhood around you. Like I know that there's some folks that live around us that I've been to their houses to watch a hockey game before, and whatever the case may be, and it's been Heineken or Corona, Sleeman. You'll see a very premium selection in their fridge. Whether they buy it just because people are coming over or not, it's a whole other story. But in the since that fan group came out, going over to these same people's houses, and they got Bud in their fridge. Anyway, even if they bought 2 cases, the shift that can do in the market is crazy.
The 2 cases that they never bought before,
They never
multiplied by however many people, right?
Hey, I bought my first case of Budweiser when the thing came out, and I worked for a competitor for 10 years, so. Just because, but it wasn't even that. It wasn't even because I wanted it. Is people in my family wanted the souvenir.
We can,
Yeah, and that's the other side of it, right? It's that emotional thing that they're tying into. Is maybe you didn't have the $300 to go get a jersey, for the first year, but you had a hat, you had a T-shirt, maybe you wanted that Bud can that went with it. I mean, it's a total package approach.
So somebody's going to read that or see this and say, well, yeah, that's Budweiser. They've got millions of dollars to throw at it, so of course they're going to do that. How do I do that with $5,000, $10,000, $20,000? How do that's what you guys are there to.
But the Old Spice spots that everybody loves, the 200 of them, they're all done in 48 hours. Maybe some further ones done later, but the original launch was 48 hours worth of filming and going nuts and doing all these things around the clock. So how much can that really cost?
But I also heard that Old Spice didn't actually see that big of a market share.
Yeah.
Everybody loved them.
Yeah.
So
But they didn't buy it.
They didn't buy it, but they loved the stuff. It was on YouTube and millions, all the hits.
Yeah.
And Mustafa is now world famous and making more money than he did as a football player. But the market shift didn't happen. So so you take Budweiser said, hey, we're gonna do this, and we're seeing a market share increase. Same, but on an exponentially larger scale. And they didn't see that. So how do you engage
There was
that?
that Chevy Sonic campaign that happened. Did you guys see that? Where that one actually started in social media. It was all about firsts, right? So, your first road trip, right? Chevy Sonic and so on and so forth. And it was a social media campaign. People were asked to take video and put it in, and went up on YouTube, and eventually got so many hits that they decided to create a more traditional campaign around it. So this one actually flipped it on its head. Typically you build a traditional campaign in the brand and then flesh it out through social and watch the conversation happen. This one was totally backwards. So maybe starting light, and building your customer base.
Start conversations.
Yeah.
Look at Boomberg. Anyone know Boomberg on, was that Stafford?
Sherbrooke.
Sherbrooke.
They're coming to Valentine too. Yeah.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Hey, we were just talking about thinking another location, but you look at that place. They had a fan base before they even opened the door.
What are they? Okay.
It's basically a vegan. It's vegan, is it?
Vegetarian burgers.
Vegan burgers. But they put on their Facebook page the building of their restaurant and sort of the whole lead up, and they had, and I can't believe that it cost them a lot of money, but they had a bona fide following before they even opened their door. And I give them all the credit in the world. I mean, I know people in our office were talking about it, people like you were talking, hey, have you heard of this thing or whatever? And it was just about the building of this little new outside the box shop.
I think in reality though, one of the things that work for them is they're very good communicators. Like social media, I'm always surprised when I go to a conference for our industry and they've got the tweet stream going, and you see some people are very good tweeters that you either laugh or it's insightful, and some people are just recyclers of content that's not interesting. And the same thing for business. Can anybody do social media? Yes. But some people are just way more engaging, just like anybody could answer your phone as your receptionist, but you're going to find that one person who your clients love talking to. And I think that's the problem with businesses and social media. In the case of Bloomberg, where it's been a success for them, they're very good at putting out a message that's relevant to people and they care about, and it's well done and it's engaging. So
And building on
you
it.
want to come back and have that relationship. And I think a lot of the stuff that's out there is not relational at all. So they're great cases.
That's the
Or
magic.
even
That's the
products.
magic word, pretty much. Engaging. How can you engage them? And if that works, then you got it. But it's the right.
Yeah,
the
it's
right
really
way to
a skill,
engage.
I think, to be a good 140 character, especially on Twitter. Like to be good in 140 characters when you're trying to add your own thought on someone else's original thought. You do pretty good.
So that brings up, social media again. Keep talking about social media.
Well, it's like a funnel, right? Everything leads back to it.
Right. But it's given people the ability to expose, bogus product, right? So if you got a really bad product, service, organization, even if you don't communicate well, or even if you do communicate well, nobody's going to care, right? So even focusing in on that and making sure that, if you're helping a company or consulting or, promoting or shaping a brand, making sure that the actual product, service, or organization is something worthy of advertising.
You mentioned earlier about that's a good point. But you mentioned earlier about the free and them do it themselves. There's this one guy, I forget his name. He just left Crispin Porter, which is one of the larger, more creative advertising agencies. Formed his own agency with a really cool name, like
Yeah, I know what you're
Vespers and Boyle. Anyway.
Victors and Spoil.
That's it, Victors and
Oh,
Spoil,
yeah.
which is a really cool name. I like that. But the whole reason being that this social media thing, they're specializing in it. But what they're saying they're going to do with every client is we're going to do the free thing first. So we're going to try everything we can for free. I think there's probably a fee for that. But we're going to try all the free media, all the free stuff you could do. And I've done that myself with another company I have that we did everything for you, and we had huge boost in traffic, and then we didn't have the money or anything to sustain it, so it fell off. But you can do that. You can get a super boost going for free, like using free tools out there, and get your name all over the world on websites. But it's really the plan and the sustenance, the sustaining part of it that you really need to focus on. So, that's kind of a little bit scary, that whole free aspect, but maybe something that we need to do too is charge a fee to try those avenues before they spend money, and that would also bring in those smaller companies too that don't have a huge budget that could maybe afford a few grand for us to do the free part.
Have any of you guys had the experience of the Old Spice or whatever, where you do something, you think it's going to work, but it just absolutely takes off, or opposite, just you think it's going to do great and it just bombs, and you're trying to figure out why? Like,
Never.
Never yet.